Welcome to all of you for this session of the DCAD. It's a webinar from Access to Agency, Rethinking Digital Inclusion for Persons with Disabilities in the Age of AI. I'm the moderator, Giacomo Mazzone, and I give immediately the floor to Dr. Muhammad Shabir for the welcome remarks.
Rahim, thank you very much, Komor, and everyone. Good morning, afternoon, noon, evening, or greetings of the day wherever you are in the part of the world. Today, we are gathered to celebrate a very unique event recently started some 9 years ago, Global Accessibility Awareness Day. Global Accessibility Awareness Day is celebrated every third Thursday of May every year. And while we celebrate this day on a specific Thursday of May every year, but this requires that we remember the discussions that we will be doing today are being done at different forums, online or in person, and we apply them throughout the years to make the internet and digital environments accessible for people with disabilities and for everyone. I'm particularly thankful to Vint, the benefactor of the Internet Governance Forum's Dynamic Coalition on Accessibility and Disability. He has been coordinating with the DCAD for very long, and we are thankful that he has joined us today as a keynote speaker. Giacomo, Judith, and the teams, thank you also for joining us and making us help organize this event. We have live captioning available, and also we have sign language interpretation. So feel free to send your questions in the chat, or we have also dedicated a separate time slot in the agenda for the discussion and question answers if the participants have any. With this, I rest my case. Thank you once again for everyone joining us this afternoon or morning.
Thank you very much, Shabir. It's Vint Cerf now, and I assume it's all right if I start. Is that right, Judith?
Sure. We could have you talk first, and then I'll talk afterwards about.
I'm sorry. I did not mean to interfere.
No problem. What we wanted to do in the thing is that we wanted also to tell people about the fellowship program that we're going to be having for the IGF.
Oh, then please tell us about that, Judith.
Yeah,
yes. So
thank you.
every year, through the generosity of Google and Dr. Vint Cerf, we host a fellowship program where we bring usually several people to the IGF, and we're going to be opening up the IGF will be hosted in Nairobi, Kenya, December 14th to the 18th, and we will be opening up our fellowship, putting out the applications in June. And so what is particularly interesting about our application is that unlike all the other applications, we don't set an amount of what the person will be receiving. Persons tell us what they need to get to come, whether they need someone to travel with them because they're visually impaired, or they have other type of impairment and they need someone to come along with them and share their room, whether they need something else, what they need to enable them to participate in the event. And it's unique about in the other ones, so we try to bring them where they are. And there are a couple of criteria that are important on this, and that is mostly that you need to be a member of our Dynamic Coalition, and also that you need to have registered for the IGF. And although they're very simple, a lot of people misunderstand them and they don't necessarily register in time. With that, it's a little bit of briefing. We've had a committee beforehand, and we want to thank our committee members who helped us to refine the application process, because this will be I think it's our 4th year doing this. But that's all. So stay tuned for that application. And now I will turn it over to Dr. Vint Cerf to give the keynote address. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Judith.
Yeah.
The floor is yours, please.
So, well, first of all, I want to acknowledge Giacomo, Judith, and Shabir for their leadership in the DCAD and also generally for their focus of attention on accessibility. This is an area which is neglected on the average, but I don't want to argue today that the neglect is necessarily deliberate. I think several things get in the way of improving accessibility in the digital world. One of them is that not everyone with the capability to do the work to design accessible interfaces has enough intuition about how this can be done. And it's especially hard because any particular kind of disability often has quite a spectrum in which it manifests. I'll use myself as an example. I am hearing impaired and I wear hearing aids, and they are good enough to allow me to converse in the way that most normal hearing people can. But there are others for whom that technology isn't adequate, and they have cochlear implants, like my wife, who uses some additional capabilities like little microphones or FM transmitters to aid her ability to hear. I'm sure that Shabir will relate to this. If you have a vision impairment, it could range from just needing more magnification, or it might require visual scenes be described and text be read because you can't see. And the requirements for making things accessible span quite a broad range of remediations. And the reason I bring this up is that I think we have two opportunities as technology has advanced. One of them is to take advantage of artificial intelligence. I hope that you're not misunderstanding me as saying artificial intelligence is the Harry Potter magic wand for everything, because it is not. But it is strikingly powerful, and especially as new frontier models become available from my company, Google, and from others. I have seen some significant progress in what's called vibe coding, which simply means that you describe what it is you want in the way of software, and the artificial intelligence helper produces the software. Just to show you that we eat our own dog food, as the expression goes, our CEO at Google has told us that last year, about 25% of our software was produced this way. This year, about 75% of the software is being produced that way. Now, why do I tell you this? What I am hoping we will be able to do is to train some of these large language models to specialize in accessibility software development. I've learned recently that some of the systems, some of these frontier systems, have multiple ways of learning. Historically, they've learned by ingesting a large quantity of text. More recently, some of these systems are learning from looking at videos. And I know that sounds a little crazy, at least I thought it was, but I have been convinced that the systems can listen to music, can listen to speech, can look at videos, and can learn from them. We even have a robotics team which is training the robots by having them watch videos that were artificially produced using AI techniques. So you don't have to have a person or a physical robot demonstrate what's going on. You can generate it artificially. I need your help. Those of you who are engaged in designing or building accessibility systems, user interfaces that are accessible, need to help document what works and what does not work. We need examples, and those examples can be used to help train the large language models to do a better job of generating accessible software applications. So that's one thing that we can all encourage people to contribute to. The second thing that I think is important, apart from the arrival of artificial intelligence, is the ubiquity of access to computing capability. Those of you who are online today are able to get here because you have access to the internet. Some of you are well aware that not everyone in the world does have access. The ITU estimates are that perhaps 25% of the world's population still lacks direct access to the internet. Some of that challenge is going away thanks to low Earth orbit satellite systems like Starlink and others, but they also go away because countries and companies are investing increasingly in the infrastructure that's needed to provide internet service. Just to reinforce the point that our accessibility needs and desires rest on top of infrastructure that must be in place and reliable, I have to remind you that computers don't work without electricity. And so if you have no electrical power, you may have a problem getting access to and using the internet or even using a computer.
This was the case for me.
Yes, exactly. Yes, it is precisely the case for you, Giacomo, today in particular. So there is a great need to invest in the infrastructure that supports the technology that we would like everyone to be able to use. I think one other point that I think is worth making is that when people use these technologies, they often have experienced things that don't work very well. And so we need to put in good feedback loops, easily accessed feedback, so that we can learn from the users what is and is not working. And of course, we must pay attention to that feedback. It can't go into the wastebasket. I value my interactions with people who have disabilities because I learn from them ways in which to improve the user interfaces that they are dependent on. I am much more interested in today's call to hear from the rest of you what ideas you have for improving our capability to provide user interfaces that are fully accessible. And so, although I was given a substantially longer period of time, I'm much more interested in giving back some time so we can have a useful and fruitful discussion. So with the permission of Shabir and Giacomo and Judith, I will stop here and invite us to continue in the program. I will be here for the entire call, and I'm eager to hear from the rest of you. Thanks so much, and I wish all of you a very good day.
Thank you very much, Vint, even for being shorter. This will give us more room for discussion. And I see that Shabir is still with us, so probably we can give the floor to him for his presentation that has a very attractive name, the Apomechanic System Accessibility, AI, and Automated Exclusion. I have no clue what it is about, but I hope that I will understand at the end of the session. Thank you. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Giacomo and Vint. It's always a treat to listen to your ideas. Personally speaking, I have some experience of using AI systems and I have unique experiences which I will share afterwards. But I do not have a presentation or slide deck for this conversation because I want us to understand the system and the terminology that I am trying to give. And this terminology is the first word in the discussion that I posed today. It's the apomechanic web or apomechanic systems. We have a name for the disconnected ones, those who do not have access to the internet. They are disconnected. We have an expression for the people who lack finances to get access to the costly technology, because in certain areas, technology and getting access to the internet devices it's a cost which some people cannot bear. But having these two check boxes checked, having state of the art internet connection, having a hi-fi devices in your hand, but still being unable to use the system because system sends you away from itself. Now, some of you might be thinking that how could a system send a user away because it's a machine and machine cannot send a person away. So there comes the terminology and the definition that I'm trying to explain. This word apomechanic may seem new to you because I'm trying to coin a terminology there. Yes, it's a new terminology that I gave in one of my Diplo article, which was published on Diplo Foundation website. Apomechanic is a combination of two words, and it comes from Latin, Greek, apo and mechanic. It's a system that sends a user away because of its inaccessibility or its development in such a way that a person is unable to use it. For instance, a button which is unlabeled, a visually impaired person is unable to press that button to submit the form, to sign up for an application, to sign up for email, or to log into any system to perform any online system. In that way, system is actively sending the user away. When we say accessibility, it means that the people needs to be trained to make the system accessible for persons with disabilities. But when we say apomechanic system, it means that the fault is with the system. It needs to be fixed. And to understand this in a more theoretical terms, we need to understand the terminology that comes in the societal way of dealing with persons with disabilities. Earlier, they used to say that persons have issues. For instance, he or she doesn't have eyes, give him eyes, operate on him, artificial eyes, artificial limbs, etc., etc., and the issue will take care of itself. This was the medical approach. Then came the UNCRPD, and the CRPD said that no, the system is, person is perfect, person is there, and person has dignity, which needs to be treated with dignity. Society has barriers, and if you remove those barriers, if there is a building which is of 2 or 3 floors and it doesn't have access ramp or through elevators, provide that access, and persons with disabilities would be able to go onto any floor they want to go. That's the approach of CRPD. In the same length, in the same way, we are trying to say that fix the system and people with disabilities would be able to use those systems. Now, in this, apomechanic systems means, now I'm not saying that the financial or what Vint described, the technical or the internet connectivity issues, they are not important. They are crucially important because without these issues or these technologies, we would not be able to even connect to the internet. But this apomechanic system can be anywhere or everywhere. It can be in the USA, or it can be in the some northern parts of Pakistan or any African country, and it can catch anyone anywhere. So what we are asking there is that we need to build the systems in a way so that the systems are not actively sending the people away from themselves. And Windsurf very eloquently explained the use of AI to build these systems. I have interesting experiences. Uh, to just put the things in perspective, I'd like to let the people know that I do not know a single word of coding, yet I was able to develop a full website using AI system of my own. And this website used my own CV and profile and some other documents with some prompting in just about 2 hours, a full website. But interestingly, there were some buttons, there were some graphics which were labeled. I'm not saying that those were not labeled, but they were labeled in a way which a human would not label them as. I may not be putting the things in right perspective, but a human, when they caption a picture, they explain the scene, they describe what is happening, and sometimes they describe the context for which that picture was being placed on the website. But that AI system that I use to prepare my own website, it was, perhaps there might be something wrong with the prompting or something wrong with the system, but the ultimate result was that the website created through that AI system was not accessible, whereas no automated system, no AI generated system would be able to detect these kind of faults. For these, you need human experiences. And I thank Cerf when he says that we need, and the technological world needs human experiences that are shared with them, and the AI models are trained on those experiences so that these can be improved. Until we have such perfect systems, I believe human experiences would remain crucial and important in not only developing the systems, but also improving testing and also further developing the systems. Giacomo, like Cerf gave some time back to the audience, I would also like to stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mamad. That's now we all know a little bit more about the topic, and so I hope that this will raise many questions in the discussions, and we can open now the discussion. I see that there are some comments in the chat, but they are not exactly in the form of questions. I see, for instance, Charles Hall that say something. And do you want to put in form of the question for the speakers?
And also Giacomo Vint has his hand up.
Oh, sorry, I cannot see.
Vint.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate Shabir's summary and explanation. When he was describing turning people away, I thought of digital ostracism, which, if you remember, ostracized persons were shunned and pushed away from the Greek city that they lived in. And that's kind of what I think Shabir is describing. The thing I wanted to suggest is that we are on the cusp of AI systems that act as agents. I'm sure you all are well aware of that. And I'm beginning to think that between agency and the potential for learning automatically, today the large language models are trained very deliberately, and then after training are used to do inferencing. They don't learn on their own. I see my video just got turned off. I don't know why that happened.
Zoom, you're back. You are back.
I'm back. So I'm hoping that we will eventually develop AI systems that will learn from their experiences so that we don't have to stop the world, train them again over long periods of time, and then reintroduce them into use. We get the simulation of learning with today's systems because some of them have what are called very, very large context windows. The one I'm familiar with, of course, is Gemini from Google. And what you can sometimes do is load a great deal of information, a book, articles, references, and things like that, before you engage in a conversation. And the information that you provide adds context to the way in which the response is generated. That looks a little bit as if the system is learning. Another thing that you've probably seen is that a chatbot may take your question or your statement or your prompt and then do a web search. And it is ingesting into its context window current material coming from the web. Once again, it makes it look as if the model has current knowledge. It does, but it evaporates after the conversation is over. I'm hoping that there will be a time when that learning is actually incorporated into the model. Those of you who are thinking carefully about this will also notice that you might not want the system to learn things that you discussed with it that were private. So I don't suggest this is a trivial problem to solve, but it will make a big difference if our systems learn as they are used.
Thank you, Vint. So in the chat, I said that there was Charles Hall with some comments, and I see that Kamran Rafik explained how we use AI. Use AI for troubleshooting whenever he has a problem with the network or a device or server configuration. So, do you want to elaborate on that? I see Amrita joined us. Ciao, Amrita. Welcome.
So while Kamran Rafiq decides whether he wants to speak up, I think one of the comment precipitated a concern in my mind regarding to the issue of privacy in terms of data that is being collected to make the systems accessible. While it's wonderful that these AI systems can help us so much, but I, as Vince have said, that there are certain conversations that ought to stay private, and how a user is able to, in terms of disability, when it means that I can have a system read my uh, printed post, my printed conversations, printed material, even my credit cards and other stuff. While there are risks of getting these read by humans as well, but AI systems can read them. But where this information is stored and how that information would be used is crucial thing. As a person with disability, this is one of the concern that stops me from using in AI more and more in the daily life, where it might be more useful. But at the same time, I understand that there are certain provisions in certain models where you can have private conversations and you can direct an agent or an LLM that it should not keep the conversation, certain conversations stored. So these kind of conversations should also needs to happen between persons with disabilities, their concerns, and the people who are developing these models and particularly training these models.
Vint, this indirectly is a question for you. Are you aware of any possibility today for people with specific disability to use the AI in a more protected way?
Well, I don't want.
No, okay. Vint, please go ahead.
I don't want to sound like I am expert here because I am not. But my impression is that as people experiment with the vibe coding capability and are able to describe to the system what they want it to do, that we should be experimenting with the large language model programming tools to see whether coaching them actually produces accessible code. I do not have personal experience with that, but now that we brought this up in conversation, it's on my list of things to try out.
Yeah, it could be interesting to have a conversation between. Yeah, please, Mohammed, go ahead. No, please go ahead. No, I said that could be interesting to have a panel of discussion where the AI developers could confront themselves with the needs of the people with special needs, no?
Yes, with the lived experience, I can tell you that I have experimented with some of the AI models. While I cannot speak as an expert about how the code learned itself, but I have used AI models to generate graphs to generate different kind of maps, and to also have this is AI model explain some of the pictures and graphs for me, some scenes as well. Sometimes it does a very wonderful job. Sometimes it does a very poor job. The question then comes into mind is that as a user with lived experience of disability, I cannot tell it myself that whether the response that I received is reliable or not. So when I say that privacy concerns are there, trust concerns also need to be elevated, and we need to, as Vint say, we need to share more and more experiences so that more reliable responses can be received. I understand it's a slow process, and it will take time to mature.
Thank you, Shabir. Anybody else want to intervene in the conversation? I see that Alessandro Ciceri in the chat say some interesting reflection. Do you want to share with all of us?
Yes, sure, if I may. I hope my connection holds out.
Yes,
So-
we can hear you. Yes, please.
Yes, so my area that I explored in my thesis was machine unlearning, and it tries to be basically GDPR compliant in that it removes select points of information from LLMs. And what I found particularly pertinent to this discussion is the interaction of unlearning with pre-existing biases in society. And what we find is that often when points of data are removed, they actually exacerbate the biases that already exist within a data set. So if we apply that to, for instance, a disabled context where we might find that those biases are particularly pertinent to a certain population, we might find that inadvertently, in trying to address a privacy concern, we sort of make the bias problem worse. And so what Mr. Cerf said was completely salient in that there are valid privacy concerns, but in practice, and I mean what I try and look at, is how we can make it so that the biases aren't then furthered when you try and remove those points of data and preserve privacy. Thank you.
It's Vint. I wonder if I could respond to Alessandro.
Yes, please. If you have an answer, yes, please go ahead.
And first of all, Alessandro, I love listening to your voice. It's beautiful. And also what you had to say was very relevant. As you were talking, I was writing a note to myself about the possibility of having an AI system which has access to information that is yours, and you keep it separate. As the context gets provided to the AI system when you're interacting with it, but the context is taken away, which is typical of most of AI systems now. They do not learn from the exchanges that they have. But if all of you are probably familiar with the notion of cookie from the World Wide Web days, where you go to a web server and it asks your computer, do you have a cookie from an earlier exchange? If you do, may I have access to it so I can reestablish context? So imagine that part of our normal toolkit is to have a context which is available to an agent or an AI system when we're interacting with it, but then that context is preserved in our cloud services or our cloud account, but it is not accessible to the agent or to the AI model, except when we're interacting with it. Now, I'm sure I'm glossing over a million different problems, but this is not an unusual thing. We've done it before in a very tiny, tiny way in the cookie sense. So maybe we can do that with the agents as well.
That's a path that could be followed, I think. Interesting. So, I see if there is something else in the chat.
Your hand is still raised. Is that a new hand?
For who? Who is I cannot see the hands in my project.
Yeah. Anyway, well, there was also a couple of questions here on the chat as I see them. Is that one question is, some people using all caps by accident, or people putting all caps on purpose. And so that's the question is, are they meant to be doing that, or is it not? And always also the question is things that are supposedly there was a comment earlier where a person who was using a wheelchair can't get access to the building. So the building was made inaccessible. It wasn't necessary, and it was not necessarily a fault of the person or of the people or the agency in that building. And it did. I think we touched on the awareness ability, is that people may not be aware that what they are doing makes things inaccessible, or they think, oh, we don't have any persons with disability here, so it's not important. And so I think that is sort of what we need to break out of, is that we have to be thinking, how are we going to make this available to everyone and not just only to certain people? So that's what the idea of the actual, what Dr. Sabir was talking about, the Apple mechanic, make sure that everything is as open and inclusive as possible, so that no one feels that it's left out, or no one feels like, oh, I'm being excluded, and that is the wrong thing to feel. So we want to make sure that everything is open as possible. And Cameron mentioned about a meta layer AI, secure the web and application. So that's something we would be interested in talking about if Cameron wanted to talk about that. But what other questions do people have? Because we still have plenty of time for questions. So please do let us know.
Rafik, your comment in the chat, would you elaborate on that?
Meanwhile, people think about the questions. One of the response that I want to comment on Judith's point, when she says that people do not make the building accessible, thinking that since we do not have persons with disabilities, we do not need accessible systems. Disability is something that can catch anyone anytime in our lives, and as we age, which with aging also comes certain barriers that emerge as we age, and this requires that every system that is being built, be physical or digital, since we are talking about digital systems in this space, so every system that is built should be built accessible right from the start, instead of adding accessibility features retrofittingly. Because if we do that, we would not just be putting ourselves at risk, at difficulty, but we would be raising our costs. So I stop here. Lokomor, do you have any hands or comments?
Hands not, but there are many exchange in the chat, but people are shy in telling.
And Vint, you have your hands up. You have your hand up.
I've never turned down an open microphone. Actually, Deirdre has a very useful comment in the chat. She says there needs to be improved proactive reporting by persons with disabilities of obstructions that they meet. I'm reminded of Shabir's article proposing that persons with disabilities are canaries in the coal mine that point out problems that are otherwise invisible. And indeed, she and Shabir are both very much right about that. The big challenge is getting the comments into the ears and in front of the people who can do something about them. We have a situation at Google where we have the real estate and workspace team does have an open channel for people to report disability interferences with accessibility. And we try very hard to take actions to solve those problems. But we need to build a societal reward, in a sense, for tackling problems like that. We want there to be an incentive within our culture to want accessibility and inclusiveness to be part of our normal culture. And I'm sorry to say that that's less the case in today's United States than I would like. But I don't want to pollute our conversation with any political comments.
Right. And Dr. Shabi,
Thank you, Vint, for putting it very nicely. My question, Vint, for you is: I wonder, as more and more organizations and systems are turning towards AI models for feedback and for so many things, and they are reducing human interventions. Earlier, the web and internet was made accessible for people with disabilities through a lot of human intervention. I wonder if there is any renewed discussion at the corporate level of having or including more feedback. As you say, it's very important from persons with disabilities with their lived experiences.
So I think that we're in early stages of all of this, and I don't want to suggest that Google has an active program. I don't know that we have one that's specific to using AI for accessibility, but I will say we have had a team at Google ever since I joined the company 20 years ago that focuses on accessibility. And so it seems to me, as we introduce AI methods in our company, and we are pursuing this rapidly, that there will be opportunities to use the AI system to expose problems and also to explore solutions to accessibility of online systems. So this conference is simply another stimulus for me, anyway, to pursue that goal.
So one of your earlier comments, sorry, Judith, I'm cutting you short for the second time, but I promise to give you time after this. So when you said earlier that agents are being trained to watch videos, AI-based videos, and as a visually impaired, this is really intriguing for me because in the room, when I am in a conference, it's very sometimes disengaging when you cannot read the mood of the room. So having some kind of cues or information related to that, if the AI models are trained enough, and I understand that we will be very far away from that moment where we would be able to reliably use the AI models for this kind of functioning. But certainly these kind of cues and information would be very useful.
Wow, it's Vint. I can't help but jump in. That's a really interesting question. Most of the models are good at describing the physical scene and maybe even saying what it thinks is going on in that scene. But the idea of detecting sentiment is, I think, a much more subtle thing. And even people have trouble, even sighted people have trouble with detecting sentiment. So that's a pretty big challenge that you put on the table, Shabir. But I will take that back to my colleagues as one of the challenges of the week for sure.
Thank you. Judith.
yes, thanks so much. Yeah, I think that's an excellent comment. Like you said, people don't have a good variety, even sighted people, on sensing the room. It has to do with people being able to read other people. And many, even sighted people, have trouble reading other people. So that's an issue. But I also wanted to comment on what I find is the inaccessibility is that people are looking at always time savers. And so they're always looking at what can save me a few seconds, what can save not. And they often go to like snapshots or other type of images to copy things from one document to another, which then makes a document that had been accessible inaccessible. And it's not that I don't want to think, oh, well, there's no one reading this who needs accessibility. Is they also don't think, oh, well, it doesn't make that much of a difference. And I think we need to have some kind, like you said, some kind of incentive program to get people to like, oh, this is important. Like just to make sure that they do everything with intention, that they do everything with the idea that we don't know who's going to be looking at a document. It should be made accessible for everyone. And if it takes another minute or two, that is what they should take, because they wouldn't do that if they had known someone was going to be doing that. If someone was watching them and saying, oh, you didn't do X, Y, Z, then they would have done it. But the idea that that no one is needing this, and they think, oh, why do I need to take my extra time? And I think that is what I was interested in. I thought that Vint had said, is that we need to be open and always working on doing things, and not just like who's going to need it, but that it should be needed at all. I don't think people, if there was like a stumbling block right away, people would just move around it. But it's the idea of societies not caring to where things are. We see it on the street all the time where people put these scooters or mopeds in the middle of the street, so that a person with visual thing, or even someone who's using a wheelchair, can't maneuver around these things. And it's just, I don't know how to change the whole societal view of that. And maybe someone else has any suggestions on that.
Thank you. I want to attract your attention on a contribution written by Charles Hall in the chat. He's indicating some of the standards, the technical standards on which the consortium for the W3C is working. And some of them are very highly related with the discussion we are having. One is the ethical principle for web machine learning, and another one is identity and the web. So I will have a look at this, and I suggest you to do the same to see if we can find some of the answers to the questions that have been raised. Any other comments?
Vint has his hand up.
Yes, please, Vint.
Yeah, you're getting more Vint than you probably bargained for. The idea of interacting with an online service using conversation is somewhat new. I mean, we've had the ability to understand speech pretty well for quite a while now. The research into that, of course, started 60 years ago, but it's only been in the last decade that we have really seen major improvement in speech understanding. But the reason I bring this up is that as we start looking at agents, that is to say AI, which has the ability to cause something to happen, I can imagine a conversation when you're working with a website, or you're working with a language model that's driving the website, having a discussion about accessibility. Then the question will be, could the system be smart enough to make alterations to the presentation of the content that is based on the feedback, immediate feedback coming from the user? And I am speculating at the top of my lungs here, because I don't know for sure if we have any capacity to do that, but a modifiable interface doesn't sound entirely crazy to me. And the idea that you could coach an AI system to alter the interface to improve quality for the user feels like it is worthy of consideration.
That's interesting. A machine that learn how to make better his work through a conversation. Yeah.
We do this in a sort of very minimal way. There's something called the Google Home appliance. You speak to it and it responds in voice terms, but it can also be outfitted to control things in the house. These are Internet of Things devices, so you can have the lights turn off and on, select the channel on the television system, raise or lower the sound levels. These are all controls. So the question is, could there be interface controls, presentation controls that could be activated by an AI to adjust the interface that you're experiencing?
So until next year conversation of the anniversary of the same day, we can make some trials and see if the results are there. And we can report in 1 year's time. So we have to go towards the end of the conversation because we are finishing at the time our data is available for us. There is any further question that comes out from what you have listened until now? Judith, you see any hands?
No, so I do not see any hands, but what I think we should also note is that that one of the things I see more problematic now with AI and the automated languages is, and I don't know how to change that, is that once now that we have AI captions on everyone, no one wants to pay for the human captioning. And so we are losing good resources because there's something that's almost as good. And I kind of don't know how do we come back about this? Do we just say, oh, well, some people get disadvantaged until AI gets better? Or what do we do? So that is sort of what my question to everyone is like, how do we go about ensuring that we're giving a place that is accessible to all when people don't want to pay for something when they have something that it's almost as good? And I don't have an answer to that because we don't have statistics to show that this would affect everyone. And maybe, Dr. Cerf, do you have any answers to that?
Before we bring in Vint once again, do we have any person with hearing impairment or Lydia Best? I think she registered to comment on this. People who are hard of hearing.
I don't know. Looking at the participants, I don't know who is that.
Because this is, I know for sure from the discussions with people who were deaf or hard of hearing a couple of years ago, that they really hated AI captions. But now, since we are 2 years down the line in the age of AI, and so many systems have improved so much, I would definitely want to listen from someone who has been experiencing these systems more and more in their lives before I comment. Because as we say, our experiences are more important. Cost should not be the factor in deciding whether a system should or should not be accessible. That's a final thing from the perspective of DCAD. Other people or institutions may have different views, but for us, cost should not be a factor where accessibility is concerned. That's why when we provide fellowships, whether you need a human assistant or sign language interpreter or any other system to make your participation in the IGF accessible, we say that we will make our best to provide you with that facility so that your participation is enabled in the IGF.
Yes, and Charles Hall has put in a comment that the W3C is working on accuracy of captions for WCAD 3.0, but that's a couple of years away. And as he says, 95% accuracy may be acceptable in entertainment or other contexts, but in critical information systems, it definitely is not. So I would, in a few minutes that we have left, I would ask Dr. Cerf to comment on that.
Well, I will certainly. I'm a user of captioning systems all the time, and they do have their amusing quirks. There's one that was developed at Google by one of our deaf Russian engineers, Konevsky, called Live Transcribe, which is available on any Android device for free. But we use it all the time around our house because my wife and I both have hearing impairments. But I have to tell you, we're very amused by some of the mistakes that are made. One thing that might bode well in this space is that the more the large language models and agents interact with each other, if they use spoken language, then their models will have to get much, much better for the reasons that Charles implied. And so it might be an interesting question whether we can get these large language models to communicate not with text, but with voice, and then see whether we can improve the system by artificially restricting the communication to be voiced rather than typed. I have no idea whether that makes any sense, but I'll ask my AI people here at Google whether that would let us train the speech recognition to improve.
Answering to the question raised before, I have to share with you the experience we had for a large symposium that we organize every year. In Italy, we tested for half a day simultaneously the interpreter system and the transcription made by a machine. And I have to say that English is acceptable, but when you move to other languages, we are still very, very far.
Yeah.
And the mistakes that makes funny the conversation between you and your wife when they applies to a scientific symposium could be very embarrassing. So,
indeed. With apologies, I have another call I must get on, and I'm 1 minute late. But thanks so much for organizing this. I've taken a bunch of notes, and I know you'll share some of the things that came up today as well, because we've had an automatic note taker. We will be amused to see what mistakes it makes. Meanwhile, see you on the net.
Great.
Thank you.
So much.
Yes, thank you, Cerf. Yep.
So I wanted to thank everyone for
I
coming
think
out.
we are at the top of the hour and we need to close down the call. With this, I think I don't have anything much to say for this session. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. Giacomo for wonderful moderation, Judith, Jolly, and everyone else for technical communication and facilitation in organization of this event. The captioners and the sign language interpreters for translating this conversation, and everyone else for joining us and making this discussion enriched through your comments. We will continue these discussions, and Judith will send the summary of these discussions to everyone on the list. Thank you, and good day.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming. And as Vint says, see you on the net. And stay tuned to our announcements. Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you.